kids, I'm Jeffery Towery, author, public speaker, and creator of the Autistic Survival Manual. I've written 3 books and I'm in the process of publication right now. The Autistic Survival Manual, my Echo in the Flame trilogy, The Echo in the Flame, The Verdant Frontier, and I'm working on my 4th book, The Children of Ash and Memory. So stay tuned for publication updates. I built this podcast as a way to bring the insights from my books and my life together in one place. If you love stories about growth, survival, and what it really means to be different, you're in the right spot. And now it's time for the broken news, where we look at what's happening in the world of autism and neurodiversity, because being different doesn't mean being disconnected. First up, a new international study is changing how scientists think about autism. Researchers found that people diagnosed early in childhood and those diagnosed later in life actually showed different genetic profiles and developmental patterns. Early diagnosed individuals tend to have distinct communication-related genes involved, while later diagnosed adults often show markers tied to social and mental health factors. Well, what does that mean for us? Well, autism isn't a single story or a single cause. And it's definitely not acetaminophen. It's a whole ecosystem of different genetic and environmental paths. Your timing, your surroundings, your life experience, they all shape how your mind develops. And that connects directly to our theme today, how the world around us helps determine which parts of our DNA wake up and which parts stay quiet. In related news, the U.S. National Institutes of Health just announced a $50 million initiative to explore how genes and environment work together in autism. The Autism Data Science Initiative will fund more than a dozen projects studying how diet, pollution, stress, and early sensory experiences affect development. For our community, that's a hopeful sign. Proof that the research world is finally catching up to what many of us have lived, that biology and environment are partners, not opposites. And that brings us right into today's topic, the theory of how our experience don't just influence us, they literally help write who we are. Now it's time for the word of the day, epigenetics. Epigenetics is the science of how our environment, our emotions, and even our memories can shape which parts of our DNA are active, without changing the code itself. Think of your DNA like a library. Every cell in your body has the same collection of books. But epigenetics decides which ones are open, which ones are bookmarked, and which ones stay closed. Scientists first discovered this idea while studying famine survivors. After World War II, researchers followed families who lived through the Dutch hunger winter, a period of severe starvation. Decades later, their children and even grandchildren showed higher rates of heart disease and diabetes. The trauma of hunger had left chemical marks on their DNA, changing how certain genes were expressed. Another study looked at mice, trained to associate the smell of cherry blossoms with pain. Their offspring, who were never exposed to that training, still showed fear when they smelled cherries. Their genes had carried a kind of emotional memory, warning the next generation about danger. Epigenetics tells us that experience doesn't just shape the mind, it shapes the body. It's memory written in molecules. And here's the part that moves me the most. Those same marks that came from pain can also come from healing, love, safety, and joy. They can rewrite our chemistry too. For those of us who've been told we're too sensitive, too intense, or too different, epigenetics suggests that sensitivity might not be weakness. It might be an evolved response. Our biology learning to listen more closely to the world around us. So when someone says you've changed, well, maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe it's your DNA learning the story of your survival. And one more thing, if you're neurodivergent, if you ever wondered why your mind works differently, remember, it's not your parents' fault. It might not even start with them. The blueprint of who you are could carry echoes from generations before you. Ancestors who lived through stress, war, toxicity, or scarcity, their survival shaped you too. Epigenetics reminds us that inheritance isn't blame, it's connection. You are part of a long line of people who adapted to survive, and that means deep down you were never broken. You were built to endure. When I first learned about epigenetics, I didn't think of DNA. I thought about memory, ancestral memory. I thought about what we carry inside us without realizing it, the weight of experiences that aren't even our own. I used to think I was just born anxious, born restless, born different. But maybe it's not that simple. Growing up, I watched people around me react to stress in different ways. Some shut down, some exploded, and some, like me, turned inward, trying to understand what was really happening. When I started to study neurodiversity and sensory processing, it clicked that maybe those patterns weren't just personality. Maybe they were history. My military years taught me about endurance, about holding yourself together no matter what's happening around you. But they also taught me how the body remembers tension. Even when you leave the uniform behind, part of the vigilance stays wired in. Later, working with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and if you don't know who they are, look them up, I saw something different. People transforming trauma into joy, pain into parity, fear into visibility. It was healing, but it was also revealing. It showed me that the same intensity that I once felt like a burden could also become a gift. I've had my ups and downs, and hell, I've even had my crash and burns. But through it all, my integrity and my inner voice have kept me steady and alive. And getting to hear my voice, this voice again, after all these years, brings me great joy. I'm finally speaking my mind, and it makes me happy. When I think about epigenetics now, I don't just see a biological theory, I see a kind of poetic justice. Proof that the human story is never erased, only rewritten. Every act of compassion, every boundary we set, every step towards self-understanding, it's all changes the script we hand forward. Maybe that's the real miracle, that healing doesn't just end with us. It becomes part of our inheritance to the future. When we talk about epigenetics, we're really just talking about transformation, how life experiences shape us from the inside out. I used to think healing was about erasing the past, but it's not. It's about rewriting it. Every time we face our fears, every time we choose understanding over shame, our bodies and minds adjust. They learn a new rhythm. Maybe that's what survival really means, not coming out untouched, but coming out changed, carrying new instructions for compassion. If trauma can echo through generations, then so can love. Every act of kindness, every boundary, every moment of clarity, they all ripple forward, altering the chemistry of what it means to be human. So when you start to see your own differences, your quirks, your sensitivities, don't treat them as defects. They're adaptations. Proof that your ancestors endured, and that you endured, and that evolution isn't finished with you yet. We are each of us living evidence that life never stops learning. And that's what I mean when I say we're not broken. We're becoming. So before we close, I'd love to hear from you. Were there parts of this episode that resonated with you? Are there topics you'd like me to explore from the future? Let me know in the comments, like, share, comment, push all the buttons, what you liked, what you didn't, what made you think. I'll try to address some of your thoughts next time. Thank you for listening to I'm Not Broken with Jeffery Towery. And I have ASD, ADHD, OCD, PTSD, and everything but a PhD. But I'm not broken, because different isn't broken.